Hi there, it's me Jonas. Today we'll be discussing how a repository supports you in the case when redesigning a product. The goal of a redesign in general is to make major changes and rebuild parts from the ground up because it's not feasible to iterate the old version in small steps anymore. This can be the case after several years when some concepts of the past are outdated and not easy to change. So the overall goal is to come up with new and better concept for the same use cases, target groups and brands. For sure, in this case, you want to take as much learning into account as possible to avoid waste potential. So it's essential to evaluate the old design and identify all requirements and practices to know what to bear in mind. A repository with user research knowledge and insights is a great source of information for such a use case. But for sure, this is a special case I show here. In general, a repository helps throughout all phases of a product and service development in companies. Even if a redesign is to change major components of a product, it's a huge opportunity to change many small elements too. In a regular process without a repository, you would most probably look into the roadmap, the backlog, and do workshops on what to change. In addition, you would take into account the state-of-the-art best practices and the best case, even the results of a more explorative user testing. Why do I state that's not enough? Because it misses most of the prior knowledge you and your team most probably has gathered in the past. In many cases, it's lost in old reports and notes. All the things you and your team remember are strongly influenced by different biases and are most probably only a tiny bit of everything. And to tackle these issues, we have repositories. The best way to deal with such a redesign is to use the collected data, notes, insights in your repository. The highlighted pile of tiny bits of customer feedback and information. Now it's the time to bring up all of those highlights, specifically the positive mentions, so to know what to keep, the negative feedback, to know what to change, and hypotheses to dig deeper into, to evaluate new potential. So this can be a great source for innovation, for example. But in most cases, it requires more in-depth research, so be careful here. For sure, if you search for all of those items in these three categories in your repository, you won't have all the things to do right at hand, because most probably you didn't mark or compose everything relevant explicitly in the past. So they are not fully clustered yet. You have to do some research on them. But based on your prior result, there are several layers of meta information and properties. You can access the data and work on subsets with a certain level of potential. And this is great. So for example, working on 50 to 400 highlights and clustering them by parts of the customer journey or design elements helps the development team to have facts on hand to make changes and adjustments and before this, decisions leading to them. This process of screening and sense making with a redesign in mind is a strong source of input. So the more general process is first, use the search to get all the items related to different scopes of the redesign, screen them by relevance, cluster them once more for more detailed aspects of the product. I'd recommend to do a workshop with colleagues on those clusters to outline the new concept, and if you can, include your management and product owners. Then you have, in addition, you can boost the buy-in of them in the further process of decisions. This is great. And as a side note, this described process is very, very similar to the regular process you can use during an iterative development when working with existing data. For sure, an iteration is only a small redesign with some more constraints. So, leave the theory aside. But how does all of this look in practice? If you aren't familiar with a repository, here's how this would look like in practice. This is an example in our user research repository Considerly. In this case, the context is a fitness app with a B2C target group. The team did research in many different fields and used a wide variety of sources to draw feedback from. So we have access to several months of research. They used the framework of atomic UX research to structure everything and used their own taxonomy to organize. So everything noteworthy was highlighted with a defined set of tags someday in the past. And now it's the time to make use of it. As an example, as a conceptor or as an input for a new concept, I want to get input about a feature tracking to see what to keep, what to improve, or what to redesign. First thing I can do is work on a tag basis. I look into my taxonomy and search for relevant tags. In this case, I even tagged this in the past as part of the customer journey, so I open the tag. On the detail page, I see a few statistics and all the highlights with this tag. Worth a read to see what could be relevant. It's important here not only to rely on the snippets, but in case to jump into the original source to see the context and check the validity of the statement. This repository has this connection in, and you can just click on it to jump to the source. As a second step, I can try to find themes on the Discover page. Here I can see the overlapping between topics and their correlations. Here I can hover and identify the stronger connections and dig deeper into to find better potential and interesting bits for me. And as a last source, I can use the full text search. To find insights, notes or highlights with certain keywords I perhaps did not tag in the past. In this case, I will try the word progress because it's strongly correlated to tracking. And we have several results I can now look through. And with these few minutes of research, I could access the prior research data and help myself or others to redesign parts of the product for a better user experience. So you can see, through this process, highlights from old research are never lost if you have a repository. If they have proper metadata, it's additionally easy to narrow down the results by filtering. This leads to efficient processes and using the company knowledge to improve all the products. I think this one more shows the potential, the strength and the support of a proper repository in development practice. That's why we're building Considerly. So be sure to book a demo with me to learn about our repository and how it can suit your needs. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like the video and to subscribe to the channel for future updates. That's it for today. Happy researching and redesigning.